Hello, my friends. This is the Grimflayer. I hope you're all doing very well tonight. Back with yet another Golgari match for you, and this is one of those borderline hands. If we had, of course, a threat instead of one of these lands, it would be very good. As it is borderline at best. If it was any two forms of interaction besides a discard spell, I would mulligan this. As is, I am going to give it a shot. I really, really rate the turn 1 Thoughtseize in a blind match on the play very, very highly. So I'm gonna give this a keep. It certainly might not be correct. It is for sure a sketchy hand. There's no two ways about it. But we're going to give it a shot. If it's a matchup where Fatal Push is good, then we are potentially in business. Really wish we had at least a creature land, but let's hope this Thoughtseize can carry us. Okay, now this is Ad Nauseam. This is a matchup where Fatal Push is completely dead, unless for some horrifying reason they are hard-casting Simian Spirit Guide, in which case we are going to win anyway. So Fatal Push is completely dead just about game 1. It can hit Laboratory Maniac, but there is no reason they would ever go for the Laboratory Maniac kill against us. It's just a lot riskier against us than most decks. So this Thoughtseize is going to be good. Beyond that, we are completely at the mercy of our top deck. So with that in mind, what do we take? These are both mana sources, right? So they have 6 other mana rocks they can draw. They have another mana accelerant in hand, and they probably have 18 or so other lands in the deck. So we're not going to get very far taking them off of mana. So it's either going to be Unlife or Serum Visions. And Serum Visions is very good in the deck. It's digging them to their combo pieces. For those who don't know, they want to cast the card Ad Nauseam while having a white half of the combo active, whether it be this card, Phyrexian Unlife, or Angel's Grace, which is an instant. And both of these cards essentially allow them to use Ad Nauseam to draw their entire deck. When they have their entire deck in hand, they will use Simian Spirit Guides to make red mana for Lightning Storm, discarding as many lands as necessary to the Lightning Storm. It's a strange Cold Snap instant that gets charge counter, so you have to hold priority while you do it, and deal lethal that way. It has an alternative win condition, of Laboratory Maniac, which allows them to essentially draw their whole deck yet again, play the Laboratory Maniac, and play a card like Serum Visions, and win the game that way. That's, of course, a lot riskier against a deck packed with spot removal, so that's why I said what I said earlier. Now, with Visions, they're going to be digging, obviously, toward Ad Nauseam, but also to the Unlife. And Unlife, if I take this away, it's just about as good as taking the Serum away, potentially better, especially because this pulls double duty as a buffer to their life total. So I think taking the Unlife is nice here. Also puts an enchantment in the yard for Tarmogoyfs. Of course, we need to find a Tarmogoyf in order for that to be good, or indeed any threat. Again, the Thoughtseize there was nice, but our hand is looking absolutely horrifyingly bad against an Ad Nauseam deck. So they're going to resolve their Serum Visions, and they have suspended a Lotus Bloom as well. That will come off on turn 4. Ad Nauseam is a deck that can very occasionally kill turn 3, but can very consistently kill turn 4. That's its kind of claim to fame. It's hyper consistent in terms of hitting that turn 4 kill. Now, Assassin's Trophy is decent because it can hit their Phyrexian Unlifes if they find another one. The ideal use case for a card like Trophy is to let them cast Ad Nauseam and then Trophy in response. That means they'll have to cast Ad Nauseam for value, the real way, where you lose life equal to the converted mana cost of every card you draw. So, they found another Serum and another Dark Six Swords. Okay, they're doing it. Tasigur the Golden Fang. Now, man, I love Tasigur in the deck, but he really, really hurts here. Any other threat would be so much better, simply by virtue of being able to be played. Even the Scavenging Ooze, its graveyard interaction being entirely relevant against Ad Nauseam, would still be welcome, because right now I would take Grizzly Bears, that is for sure. So they'll play a Pentad Prism, and they'll play out their City of Brass, and they'll pass. Lotus Bloom's coming off Suspend, so if they have found the combo just via those Serum Vision, Scries, and draws, then next turn we are dead, and we have not drawn anything to help us out. I say we're dead next turn. We're dead to Angel's Grace plus Ad Nauseam. We have a chance against Phyrexian Unlife plus Ad Nauseam. That said, they do play Pacts of Negation as well, so they can protect their combo pieces from interaction like Trophy. And you know, I think they would have just gone for it if they had it, right? Like, waiting till our end step doesn't make sense. It gives us another draw step. They would only probably do that against a blue deck where they're playing around permission spells, right? So at least for now, they didn't T4 us. Okay, we are continuing to draw blanks, and we have no choice here but to be proactive. If they have it and for some reason slow rolled us, or if they get it off the top next turn, we are just dead. But we're not going to win the game by playing Drago against Ad Nauseam with a green-black deck, that is for sure. So, yep, they've got 2 Lotus Blooms. They play yet another Dark Slit Shores. We still know about a Simian in hand and 3 Unknowns, so they are officially flooded. They can make 4, 5, 6, 12 mana. That's a lot. They only need 6 to go off, though, so they're certainly on the flooded side of things, as are we. We kind of have ourselves to blame for that, though, with the keep that we made. Tarmogoyf is an okay draw. Anything that is a threat at this point is okay. We would have preferred interaction. Thoughtseize would have been really nice there. Liliana of the Veil is great in this matchup. But Tarmogoyf is at least better than what we've been hitting so far. And here we have to play out a forest so we can hold up Tasigur's activation if we do not need to Trophy and Unlife. They play yet another land. At least this one is a scry land for them, which is a little bit better in terms of digging. But yeah, they seem flooded. Lucky, lucky us. Alright, so on their end step, again, we have to be proactive. We are going shields down, but, you know, Trophy doesn't do anything unless they've presented an Unlife. Like, obviously hitting the Mana Rocks doesn't matter at this point, so that's a nice mill with Tasigur. We get a land out of the way, and we get a Thoughtseize, and Thoughtseize, like I said, is exactly what we wanted to draw, so we got the Thoughtseize in hand, and this is going to prompt the opponent to take action. They're going to play a Spoils of the Vault. Okay. So like I explained earlier, they kind of have 2 different pieces that comprise the so-called white half of the combo. Either Unlife or Grace will do it. They don't have another card other than Ad Nauseam. That's the black half of the combo. Spoils of the Vault is as close as it gets. In Spoils, it doesn't really replicate Ad Nauseam so much as it finds it, or indeed finds a white piece if Ad Nauseam is in hand and the white piece is what's missing. So this is a 1-mana instant speed tutor that puts the card straight into your hand, which is insanely powerful. The downside is that you exile everything along the way until you hit that card, and you lose 1 life on top of that. So this is a very high-risk, high-reward card in the deck. It's stock, and it's stock for a reason, but usually only seeing play as a 2 or 3 of, and this is kind of a desperation use case of it. So what they have to do here, I'm not sure what they have in hand, but I assume they have 1 combo piece in hand, or maybe none, and they're looking for a combo piece. Either way, the Thoughtseize has prompted them into action, so they had a pretty painful Spoils of the Vault. So they have exiled 12 cards before they hit their Angel's Grace. So they take 12 damage. They've exiled an Ad Nauseam. They've exiled their Lightning Storm. So there goes their win condition. So if they have an instant speed win con in hand, like let's say they had the Ad Nauseam, which they probably do, and they wanted to get a Grace, and then they can go off at instant speed before we get to untap and Thoughtseize, they cannot. And that is the other risk of Spoils of the Vault. In addition to the damage it deals you, it can exile your win conditions. It did for them there, and unless they have anything else, they can fog with the Angel's Grace for a turn, I guess, but, they know that it's basically over. We do have all of the ways to take out the Laboratory Maniac, and they probably do not have another win con. Usually it's just one Lightning Storm, one Labman main deck. So I have to say we got pretty lucky there. We did not get punished for a very loose keep that ended up being even worse than it looked against Ad Nauseam because Fatal Push is a total blank. It took us a long time to draw a threat. A very long time. I believe we played Tasigur on turn, was it 4 or was it 5? Might have been turn 5 we played the Tasigur. And, we started hitting our stride after that. We found a Goyf. The clock is starting to get decent. We milled over a Thoughtseize. We prompted them into action. And, I've played a lot of Ad Nauseam. I love the deck. It's really cool. Spoils of the Vault. This just happens. It's just the cost of doing business with that card. I think it's still powerful in the deck, but when you cast it in a situation like that, you do know that you're rolling the dice, and in this case, they came up not in our opponent's favor. So definitely feel lucky there. That said, things are going to get pretty interesting for both decks, potentially, after side. So let's take a look at that, see what we can come up with. Okay, my friends, we've won Game 1 against Ad Nauseam, and we're looking to put away the series with some intelligent sideboarding. So let's see what we can do here. Engineered Explosives, you could get cute with it and say, I'm going to cast it on 0, and then I'm going to hit their Lotus Blooms on their upkeep. That's not even effective if they have the Angel's Grace Ad Nauseam combo in hand. I think that's way too cute. I don't, especially because we can't get this up to 3 in our deck, so there's no chance of hitting Phyrexian Unlife with it. Not interested. Like I said Game 1 when I mentioned Scavenging Ooze as a Grizzly Bear, for the same reason Nile Spellbomb does nothing here. Now, I do want to put a little bit of an asterisk besides that, because I have seen some Ad Nauseam decks board into some crazy stuff like a Gifts Ungiven on Burial Rites package with Elesh Norn and whatever else. I'm not going to play around that until I see it. It's hardly a stock decision, but worth noting just for general knowledge. So these 3 are no's. Fulminator Mage is a maybe. I don't know if I want this, but, land destruction is fine against them. Choking them off mana is fine. They were very flooded that game, but sometimes they get choked, and if you can cleanly answer a Mana Rock, they only usually play 20 lands. They might struggle to hit that 6 mana threshold, so he's a maybe. We'll see what else we're interested in. I like these other cards more. Maelstrom Pulse and Golgari Charm. So in general, they're presenting a lot of permanents. They're presenting Lotus Blooms. They're presenting Phyrexian Unlives. They're presenting Pentad Prisms. And post-side, they're presenting Leyline of Sanctity, which is an amazing card against us. It's going to shut off our discard. It's going to shut off our Liliana of the Veil Ultimate and our Edict if for some strange reason we need that. Again, if they have a sideboard plan, maybe they'll bring in like a Grave Titan or something. Not that Edict is particularly good there, but, Dragonlord Dromoka. That's one they play. So, Golgari Charm hitting an enchantment is worth it in my opinion. And Pulse, of course, has wider targets. And so we'll bring both those in. This is not a grindy matchup. We are trying to interact while racing. We don't want Nissa. Baloth doesn't do much. Choke doesn't do much. They play way too many blue lands that are not islands, like the temples for Choke to Matter. So, Fulminator's still in the maybe board. We're not interested in the anti-creature tech. We are, however, interested in these 3 cards. So, discard is incredible against them. Collective Brutality is probably the least exciting discard, simply because there are situations where you would like to take a permanent instead of an instant or a sorcery, and Brutality, of course, cannot do that. So Duress is fantastic here. Brutality also comes in, for sure, but we're a little less excited about it. That said, the Life Drain, speeds up the clock a little bit, potentially. And Surgical Extraction. Obviously, hitting Ad Nauseams with this is pretty incredible. Like I said, they might be packing an alternative win con out of the side, but man, if they're not, this is just game over just about. And yeah. So we've got 5 cards for sure, potentially a 6th with Fulminator. And they're 5 very good ones. Let's see what we don't like. Well, 4 Fatal Push is a pretty free cut right out of the gates. Also, not sure Liliana the Last Hope is really doing much of anything for us. She's too slow to be a reliable win con in a matchup like this, where they can just top deck the win, and they kill turn 4 pretty consistently. And, yeah, maybe milling over after a Wrath or something to return the thing back. That's just not worth it. So do we want to bring in this Fulminator for anything else? I can't, even though it costs 1 more, it does just as good of a Grizzly Bear impersonation as a Scavenging Ooze, and of course its ability is potentially a lot more relevant. So let's go ahead and bring in our next level threat from the side of the Fulminator Mage. A slight upgrade on the Skoos in this matchup. They're both pretty mediocre, but we have a lot of other really good things. This is a matchup where I feel great about having access to 4 Assassin's Trophy, because Leyline's such a big problem for us. Trophy can hit the Leyline, it can hit all their other problematic permanents, it's all at instant speed, and last I knew, Ad Nauseam only played 2 basic lands, a Plains and an Island. That is what's stuck, and of course with Fields of Ruin, Fulminator Mage, and Trophies, there are progressions where we can actually start Stone Raining them out of the game. So, I like this setup a lot. We only had 5-6 cards to bring in. Sometimes we have more to bring in, but these ones all feel really, really powerful. So, let's run it back and see if we can avoid getting comboed on. Okay, everybody, we are back for game 2, and this hand functions, right? It's got our best creature land. It's got 3 lands. We can go turn 2 Goyf, turn 3 Stone Rain, potentially, if that makes sense. We've got the top end, but post board against Ad Nauseam, where they're sided against us, they know what they're against, they're going to keep our mull accordingly. I don't think we're going to beat them without interaction. I truly don't. Now, we could draw some off the top, but we have such good interaction in this deck, I think we have to mulligan here. Our opponent keeps 7. We'll mull to 6. Alright, we have interaction here. Our hand's a lot clunkier in terms of the mana. We still don't have any discard, which is unfortunate, but we do have the trophy, and we do have Liliana, who's very, very good. We still have the turn 2 threat if that's the way the progression lines up, so I'm happy to keep this. We've got to send that Fulminator to the bottom, unfortunately. And they don't have a Leyline. That is good news for us. And they will go Seachrome Coast into Serum Visions. A second Tassiger is not a very welcome draw. We're starting to already run into the too many threats, not enough interaction lineup that caused us to mulligan our opening hand. They also slid in a Lotus Bloom turn 1. I forgot to mention that. City of Brass is gonna start our clock going, so that's something, I guess. Pentad Prism, so their mana troubles are officially over. This is what I mean about Fulminator Mage sometimes being good, sometimes not. Like, we could Stone Rain them now with the Fulminator. Wouldn't really do much. They are still representing 5 mana from just their rocks alone, plus whatever land drops they hit. So, we draw land. Okay, we're going to need that. And yeah, we've got to get our threat down while the coast is clear. And hopefully we can lean on interaction from here on out and ride the Tarmogoyf to victory. That's our plan in a matchup like this. So they're getting yet another Pentad Prism down. So for a minute there, I was thinking, well, maybe they're just kind of flooded again. You know, as an Ad Nauseam player, you don't really want to see 3 mana rocks. That's just too many. So maybe, and then they really aggressively use the Pentad Prism. So these are 2 shots, right? Their charge counters are 1 use only. And the reason Ad Nauseam plays this card over a repeatable mana rock like the Signets or the Talismans or things like that is because Ad Nauseam is not interested in ramping generally, but in ramping to 1 turn where they make 6+ mana and do it all. So the fact that they used these really aggressively means one of 2 things. Number 1, it means they are flooded. Maybe they even have another Prism in hand, and they're just going to get this out while they can, before it gets discarded maybe. Or it means that they have the Ad Nauseam in hand, and we are going to die next turn if we cannot answer it. So that's my read on that. It's one of the 2. And they'll pass. Now, remember, the Lotus Bloom's coming off Suspend next turn, so even though they've spent their Prisms aggressively, they will have 5 mana next turn, and there is nothing we can do about it. We draw land. So, Liliana of the Veil is fantastic here. In general, on turn 3 with a Tarmogoyf on turn 2, we're clocking them, we're running them out of resources, we're increasing the clock by growing the Goyf. I think we have to play around the Ad Nauseam. I truly do. So we'll main phase fetch just to grow the Goyf to a more respectable 2/3, and we'll crack in. And yeah, we just unfortunately have to hold up Assassin's Trophy. If we hit another land drop, we can play Lily turn 5 and still hold up Trophy. But yeah, I don't think we can go shields down with the way they've sequenced. And yep, sure enough, they're going to go for it. They immediately crack the Bloom. They make 2 mana from their lands, and they cast an Ad Nauseam. So our read was correct. And now we get to Trophy in response. Targeting, of course, the Phyrexian Unlife, which means that before Ad Nauseam resolves, they no longer have the combo. But they have protection. So Abrupt Decay there, worth noting. Would have taken down the Unlife, but of course, Trophy is still very, very good here. It was like the second best card we could have access to behind Abrupt Decay, and of course it's way more flexible across the broad meta. So they just kind of had it all. They had the turn 4 kill with Pact backup. That is what Ad Nauseam does when it goes off. So there's nothing we can do here. We played correctly. We took the correct mulligan. We kept a reasonable 6, and we took the correct lines, but they just got us. We're going to make them play it out a little bit, not because we want to make them click a bunch and give them carpal tunnel, but because we want to see how they sideboard. So the way Ad Nauseam reads is reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand. So, like I said, in game 1 they're going to draw their entire deck, and that of course allows us to see their entire deck and therefore how they sideboarded, which will inform us for game 3 in terms of whether we want to go back to the drawing board with our own siding or what have you. Wonder if I can speed this up. Okay. Yep, so they drew their whole deck, and then I didn't make them click through the Lightning Storm. I just scooped when they cast it. So let's take a look just quick at how they sided. They still have Laboratory Maniac in. I do not think that's correct, unless they don't have an alternate win con at all in the side, in which case, fair enough. You know, I guess you leave that one in, so Lightning Storm discard doesn't just lose you the game. But pulling off the Labman kill against Golgari is quite tough. Other than that, we're seeing the Ley Lines of Sanctity, so that's confirmed. We were already playing around that, but now we for sure know. And I am seeing nothing else out of the ordinary. In my Ad Nauseam days, I would be inclined to maybe trim Pact of Negation in this matchup to bring in other things, but looks like they left in 3, which is typical main deck numbers. Yeah, so I don't see anything really from the side at all except Ley Lines, so good to know. And let's go to Game 3, see if we can get them when we're on the play. Okay, everybody, we are back for Game 3 against Ad Nauseam, and we're on the play, and our hand is medium. We have 3 lands, and we have both colors. That's good. We have turn 1 Inquisition. That's great. After that, it gets a little mediocre. I cut away a Scavenging Ooze because it's just a Grizzly Bear in the matchup, and it's a little tilting to have both of the remaining 2 in my opener, along with Tasigur, who, as we saw in Game 1, can be a very clunky threat in this match. So our threats are very subpar. We would like to see some Tarmogoyfs, obviously, instead. We would like to see Liliana. We'd like to see some interaction for the board. I'm going to feel very bad if they have a Ley Line. That said, I think turn 1 Inquisition into even Grizzly Bear's turn 2 with a functional hand is strong enough to make me want to keep this. We're just hoping they don't have the Ley Line. It's worth noting that if they have to mull for the Ley Line, that kind of does a little bit of discarding work for us as well. They did indeed take the mull to 6. They're going to keep 6, and with no Ley Line. Bullet dodged. Feeling a lot better about this medium hand now that they're at 6 with a Ley Line. Whoops, I clicked through that. So let's show you what they've got. They have a 1-lander. It's Temple of Enlightenment, so they have no turn 1 play unless they top deck an untapped land. Temple can set up their draws, but still, they've got a slow start. They've got a lot of cantrips. We took the Serum Visions. If it was only 1-1, I actually might have taken the Sleight of Hand because that finds them Lotus Blooms faster than Serum Visions does. It's a better turn 1 play in this deck. But like I said, they don't have a turn 1 play, and they have redundant Sleight of Hands anyway, so I took away the card that digs them deeper. They have that Ladman that they left in, which is kind of a dead card in hand, so they effectively mull to 5, and they have an Angel's Grace, which is part of the combo, so fair enough. I'm feeling okay. That said, I still really want to draw some interaction. They're going to play that Temple. And they're going to pass it back. We draw another Tasigur. Man, you know, I love the card, but he's kind of killing me in this match. That said, he kind of pulled us out of the fire game 1, belatedly, right? He milled over the Thoughtseize and forced them to spoils, and then they kind of just killed themselves. So they have found another land, and it's another Temple. So they are setting up their draws pretty well. And we find a Maelstrom Pulse. Okay, I don't mind that. I like the instant speed ones better for the most part, but being on the play and having a chance to play yet another Grizzly Bears this turn, you know, we'll have our windows to fire off the Pulse if need be. So look at this. How can they possibly beat 2 copies of Grizzly Bears? It just can't be done. They should just pack it in now. Sleight of Hand number 2, and they pass. So they have not found a land. They did, however, find a Lotus Bloom. So that's pretty good for them, even though it's not going to come off until turn 6. Them trying to build up their mana without this burst of 3 at once is going to be tough, because we have Field of Ruin on board. We might have other things, other answers. We could pulse a Prism, things like this. So we draw Liliana of the Veil, however, and that is about the best draw we could really see. So we get to Kraken for 4, and then we get to slam the Liliana. And then we get a pretty free pitch of one of these redundant Tazigurs. And our opponent will pitch a Ley Line of Sanctity. Alright, that's a free pitch for them too. Bloom down to 2. We're not at risk of much right now. The one thing we are at risk of, actually, that I should mention is Bantu's Last Reckoning. So, from my ad nauseam days and to my knowledge of current lists, they play like at most a Slaughter Pact main in terms of removal. But post side, they might have a Slaughter Pact, they might have a or two, they might have a Fatal Push or two, and they might have, maybe a Supreme Verdict or something, but Bantu's Last Reckoning seems to be the Wrath of choice. And they are at Bantu's mana. That said, I think they would have fired it off last turn. Still worth considering that possibility, right? So we get to Grizzly Bear yet again, getting in for 4. Then we're going to tick up the Liliana before we do anything else, see what they pitch. Usually we want to hit our 4th land drop. I don't like pitching land number 4 with Liliana, but in this case I kind of think that's the call. Still want to hang on to this Maelstrom Pulse, and I'm considering deploying the Tassiger. So they'll pitch that Labman, which as they know is not very good. And yeah, so here's my reasoning. If they had Bantu's Last Reckoning, they probably would have played it last turn. Maybe they're slow rolling it. Maybe they want us to play into it, or maybe they'll top deck it this upcoming turn. Even if that's true, we play the Tassiger, we get 3 for 1, we get blown out. We still have the Liliana ticking up to 6, right? So then we are just 1 turn away from potentially ulting and winning the game anyway. They don't have that many cards in hand. We know that one of them is an Angel's Grace, so they still need to find ad nauseam, and maybe they have it, maybe they don't, but so I think we really want to be proactive here. It also increases the clock by 1 turn. Instead of hitting for 4 next turn, we'll hit for 8. Lotus Bloom down to 1. So they play a Sleight of Hand. And they pass. Alright. Oh, Collective Brutality. Now that's a heck of a draw, and it took me a second to really make sure. But let's look at the specific wording on these cards for a minute, right? So they have Angel's Grace that of course they want to use as part of the I win combo with ad nauseam, but this can also be a fog. You can't lose the game this turn, and your opponents can't win the game this turn. Okay. Until end of turn, damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1 reduces it to 1 instead. Damage. What does Collective Brutality's Drain say? Opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Huh. How about that? So, if we get in for 8, they have no reason to fire off the Angel's Grace. They would essentially be time-walking themselves because we're not showing lethal anyway. And then we, just get to untap and kill them if they don't have the combo. So Angel's Gracing before our attack damage resolves does nothing. And then it does nothing against the Brutality Drain. It's just going to put them to 0. And they can still cast Grace, but as soon as they untap next turn, they will die before they receive priority because state-based actions kick in. Their life total is 0, they will lose. So, yeah. We get to get in for 8. Okay, no tricks. And we might as well escalate the brutality here because if something goes wrong, they counter it somehow. We're going to tick Lily up anyway, so we might as well go for the escalation here. And brutality does it. So I will be honest, when I deployed the Tassiger, I was thinking I'm going to increase the clock by 1 turn. We ended up increasing the clock by 2 turns between Tassiger damage and the Brutality Drain, and I did not consider that, to be perfectly frank, when I was plotting out my pros and cons, but yeah, that was a heck of a top deck. It really was. And the fact that I'm familiar enough with ad nauseam to know how their cards read and how my cards read relative to theirs, that was pretty cool. Life loss is pretty relevant in Modern against random cards like Angel's Grace. Worship is another one that Collective Brutality just kind of casually gets around by draining them. You know, when damage is the keyword, target opponent loses 2 life is a beautiful phrase. So we were still looking pretty good. We were about to take up with a Liliana, 1 turn away from alting, but yeah, you know, they had the Bloom coming off suspend. They might have just had Angel's Grace ad nauseam in hand, and we might have just died while 1 turn away from lethal. So pretty cool game. Really nice top deck there, and I will never know whether or not that was necessary for the win, but we got there. Yeah, ad nauseam's an interesting matchup. It really is. We have a lot of... We have an unusual level of difference between how good our threat suite is. Like, in a lot of matchups, Scavenging Ooze and Tasigur and Tarmogoyf are all about as good as one another because the graveyard gets filled, so Tasigur can come down for cheap. And Scavenging Ooze can get value, whether it be gaining life or disrupting their strategy or something. And then Tarmogoyf is Tarmogoyf. But against ad nauseam, these cards are there's a fair distance between them and Tarmogoyf, so as good as our interaction is, we have a million outs to ley lines, and we have discard, and we have Liliana, and we can potentially blow them out with a decay or a trophy on their unlife if they go for the unlife kill. We have a lot of really, really good interaction. That said, our clock can be surprisingly anemic, right? Well, so these are literally just grizzly bears in this matchup, and he can sometimes not come down for quite some time. So it's an interesting matchup, and I think one that is very heavily interactive, and the fact that there is such disparity in terms of our card quality, more so than you would expect looking on paper, it means that the matchup is often interesting and plays out in a lot of different ways. That said, we did get pretty lucky game 1, and we played very well game 2, but they just had everything they needed, and they protected their combo long enough to go off. And game 3, it was an interesting one. Either way, it was a close one, and this top deck brutality might have put us over the line. We might have been dead next turn. So, really fun match. Good games and well played to the opponent. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm trying to show as wide a variety of opposition as I can, and I'm trying not to have the opponents play too much jank. And ad nauseam is a very, very solid deck in the format. It's always quietly kind of putting up a spot in the top 32 every time a top 32 list comes out. It's just there. It's just always a deck you should know how to play against. You should be at least passingly familiar with, and you should have a sideboard plan for. So we had a good sideboard plan, and we got there. Thanks so much for checking it out, and I will see you for the next one. Have a good night.